saying to the dispatcher on the phone, I'm in this house, I have 2 kids, we have a glass front door, and there's a 300-pound man pounding at our door. Now, in the end, what happened was he was drunk. They sat him on our porch for 45 minutes to calm him down. The police are very wise. They were actually worried about him. They thought if we had actually had a gun in the house, we might have shot at him. We don't have a gun in the house. I don't know what we would have done if he busted through the door at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. But I want you to know that there are conflicts there. And one of the worries in our neighborhood is with the IVN closing at 2 a.m. and there being all-night establishments, that we might have people hanging out in the neighborhood, and there are problems. There's a conflict, and so I really don't think the Princeton merchant community needs all-night businesses in Princeton. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'd say if you're standing at the mic right now, we'll hear from you. Pair, I'll take sympathy on you, so you can get in line. But then after this, we're going to have to save the rest of the discussion till no. If you're standing there, you're fine. And we'll end at Pair, and then if there's people who are sitting who want to speak, we'll do that at the next time we bring it up. So go ahead, Peter.
Hi, Peter Crowley. Twofold. One, I happen to be the president and CEO of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce, but more importantly, I'm a resident of 49G Palmer Square West, so I live in the downtown. And in looking at some of the points that were brought up, I must admit, in my 2.5 years downtown, plus my 30 years in this region, I really haven't seen the crowds of individuals who are attracted to do things that are bad. You get a one-off situation, absolutely. You may get it in the suburbs, absolutely. And I'd love to see the police reports of how many problems occur in residential neighborhoods at 3 in the morning that don't have any impact with our vendors downtown. Also, we were approached about 2 years ago as a chamber by a number of vendors, both here and throughout the region, to find ways to help them continue to get the message out that buying local, work with independent vendors and independent merchants is really important to maintaining both our style of living here and in our region. Because of that, we started an Independent Business Alliance. It's really supporting how do we go about protecting and maintaining our independent merchants in the area. So I really think that in a way we've got a solution looking for a problem, and I'm not really certain that the solution per se addresses the individual aspects that we're looking at. So I would hope that council would seriously consider the benefits of this and or the detractions of this particular ordinance as it relates to all of our vendors and all of our merchants downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Johanna Hutchison from Maple Street. I'm in support of the ordinance, and there's just a couple of points I'd like to make. One, Maple Street does have issues. We had a mugging outside our house, and I don't think we need to add the potential for more danger on our street. It's poorly lit. The residents have taken to light it, everybody lighting their porchway, but we're just adding the possibility of more trouble on our street as it is. And as you heard earlier, we have parking issues. I do not think that this is going to help with our parking issues on the street. And again, if we already have one place open where you can get milk at 3 a.m., then I think that's enough. We don't need 2 places for it. I don't think it's needed.
Thank you.
Layla Shawbender from Maple Street, and I'm just up here to echo what my neighbors have said. I feel the same way. I think the proposed hours of operation should suffice for this community. I don't think we need to add a 24/7 convenience store at the top of our street. I think that's just inviting trouble and parking problems, travel problems, cars going up and down the street too fast. It's going to increase the traffic. I'm just not in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Per Kripke, 15 Maple Street. We live near the top, right off Nassau Street. And you've heard a lot of my neighbors.
Okay, now you need to lift the mic. There you go.
You've heard our neighbors express a lot of their concerns. Our concern near the top of the street is really about noise and deliveries and these hours of operations. Without any, we would be interested in limiting the times of the deliveries. But our experience living up there, when the IBN lets out on Fridays and Saturday nights, at 2 a.m., we get woken up by the people who are going home. They're jovial, they're loud, whistling, laughing, cars open and doors open and close, and that would be pretty noticeable from the property that's right out abuts on Nassau Street if that were to become a 24/7 operation. But there are two issues on the table for you guys tonight that kind of cross over a little bit, and that is if you remove and allow overnight parking, remove the restriction on parking from 2 to 5 a.m., then you would open up even the possibility of additional vehicles parking and then frequenting 7-Eleven if they were open right across the street. Their plan offers some parking around the front for quick drop-off. The deliveries are supposed to be along the side of the building, supposedly, but the actual discussion was about their delivery happening by taking over the parking in front, right off Nassau Street. So all the deliveries, we would hear those would happen overnight, and we'd be hearing those 7 days a week instead of just hearing noise Fridays and Saturdays. So those would be some concerns.
Okay, thank you. And there is a sign-up sheet on this table, so for anybody who's here who didn't get a chance to speak tonight, who's interested in speaking on this issue, you'll get first dibs if we decide to come back to it. I'm going to survey council right now, but if you want to sign the sheet for people who didn't get a chance to speak tonight, who would like to, and just find, there's one that's labeled overnight I'm sorry, not overnight parking, it's hours of operation. All right, now I'd like to bring it back to council, and I think that we need to decide if we want to continue this discussion and bring this back as a possible ordinance introduction. I don't think it's worth spending time if there's not a sense that people are interested in pursuing it. So I wanted to ask if people were still interested in pursuing it or not.
Well, Liz, I just have a question. It seems like if we do consider this ordinance, we should consider the 2 p.m. and 5 a.m. Otherwise, we'd have
2 a.m. to 5 a.m.
2 a.m.
2 a.m. and 5 a.m. Right. Otherwise, we'd have to start thinking about the IVN and all the others.
Okay. Is that
I just wanted to know. I mean, first of all, does everybody agree about that?
Yeah, I'll jump in, that I think people got, there was a lot of confusion today about what we might be talking about, and from my perspective, I've only ever been thinking about codifying existing practice and love our vibrant community as it is, and it's not about rolling back anything for any existing businesses, so I wouldn't support, I think a common sense codification of existing practices is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree also with the 2 a.m. Closing and the 5 a.m. opening, but there also may be an exemption for the hotels. They mentioned the hotels, people coming in late and
maybe downtown. We had talked last time about
the other question was on the theaters too, if
Yeah.
we wanted to exempt. That was in the memo. So we could have the ordinance come back with those two exemptions.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to have that. I mean, the thing is, I've been thinking about this, and it seems like if we do this, the problems that happen at 1 a.m. are similar to the ones that happen at 3 a.m. And is it worth doing it? I just wanted to throw that out there because, for instance, delivery trucks, I mean, if we say everything has to, the stores have to close at 2, are they going to be like, all the employees are going to be leaving at 2 and talking in the parking lot? And I'm just tossing this out. I'm not decided, but I just wonder if the problems could be solved by, limiting delivery truck hours and in other ways.
Mr. Miller?
It seems to me that there's a prevalent business model that works pretty well, and that very few of the businesses in our town are open during the hours of 2 a.m. to 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. And as one of the speakers this evening said, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. And from what I've heard this evening, the business model that says stay open until midnight, stay open until 2 o'clock in the morning, excludes some businesses that have particular reasons for staying open longer than that, and reopen at about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning seems to work pretty well. And it seems to me that perhaps it's worth codifying and keeping it as something that does continue to work well.
Okay, well, I think that seems, what I hear, yeah, Ms. Butler?
I have a couple of questions. Lee, this does nothing about deliveries, correct, this ordinance? There's nothing that, I guess while you're getting ready to answer that, I think Jenny raises a point that if everything closes at the same time, doesn't that increase the activity at 2 a.m. of people leaving or people rushing out to get to a store before it closes, or create more of a flurry of activity and everybody at once instead of
For the first question, this really doesn't address deliveries other than that if you're saying the store has to be closed at 2 a.m., they shouldn't be getting deliveries at 2:30 in the morning. The store is closed. Obviously, if they close at 2, their employees are going to be leaving at 2:15 or 2:30, because they have to clean up. And I don't think that's more of how is it enforced. A lot less people if you say it's closing at 2 and then the employees leave at 2:30 in terms of the noise, but you're restricting it, and that's really, I think, what the sense was and what you heard from some of the residents in the area was a concern about the noise, a little bit about the crime, a little bit less about the littering and people congregating. It seems to be more of a common nuisance. So I think the draft would address most of those concerns. We could look at, and I'm looking over at Jack and Deanna, I don't know how we regulate deliveries now. I know we have certain areas where you can have a delivery. I don't know if there's a time limit on those in terms of a parking restriction or not. But my sense would be if you say it's closed at 2, they shouldn't be getting deliveries at 2:30 because there's not supposed to be anybody there.
Actually, I'm thinking more of the morning. Businesses get deliveries all the time before they're open, don't they? Before they're open to the public, the people are in there
Why don't
working.
when it comes back, why don't we
and I
get some
thought that
more
was the
information
idea
on that?
behind the 5 a.m., but I don't have an answer, and one of my thoughts really was, if you want to continue the dialogue, maybe we can reach out to some of the merchants associations and find out a little bit more about hours of operation. If most of the stores don't really open until 9 and they're getting deliveries at 7 or 6, we could find that out and report back to you, because I honestly don't know whether they're getting deliveries much before 5 a.m. or not.
Mr. Simon?
As I listened to the various residents and members of the business community speak tonight, it occurred to me that based on the problems that have actually occurred, as opposed to the ones that people are sort of fearing, we might actually do better by the community if we were to beef up our noise ordinance from, say, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., and if we were to possibly ban deliveries from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. or 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., or find some way to at least limit the noise from deliveries. I'm still, frankly, weighing the options on this ordinance overall. I've heard very good arguments on both sides. A couple of questions I would like to have brought back to council, or answers I'd like to have brought back to council when we next discuss this, whether it's as a working session or as an ordinance introduction. One is, for that specific site, which has a history of having a 24-hour business on site, is there any evidence of significant problems from past periods when there was a 24-hour business operating on that site? That's one. A second is a request from Mr. Solo, if it's possible, which I don't know if it is, if there's any demographic information that can be attained regarding Princetonians who are up at between 2 and 6 a.m. Are we, in fact, hurting the most diverse elements of our community, so to speak, the people who have to be up at that hour to do their work? And the third question I have is from Ms. Cecil, which would be, if we do not act at this time, if we opt to wait and see and let it run as a 24-hour, let the business run, the businesses in the town run, possibly open 24 hours, are we restricting ourselves legally to options downstream in terms of being able to consider an ordinance like this in the future? So in other words, if problems develop, can we correct it, or are we sort of bound by precedent if we don't do that? So I would like answers to those questions if and when this topic comes before us. And right now I will just tell the community that I am of two minds on this issue. And I apologize to both sides for that, frankly. But
if you're ready to answer some of that now, we can, but then I'd like to move on. You were nodding before, did you, Len?
I was nodding because I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would preclude you from doing exactly what Mr. Simon is suggesting, which is address problems should they arise down the road. That said, I would like to take a look at that and come back with a definitive answer.
Okay. All right, well, maybe we get a report then at our August meeting about whether to move forward. It seemed like we were going in a direction where council seemed to be interested, at least in the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. restriction. Was that what I was hearing, at least to move forward with?
To at least talk about it, not like Patrick, I'm still weighing this.
Okay. All right, well, we'll continue to have discussions about this. Maybe we can have a report on it at our August meeting, but not do the ordinance introduction if we're going to do one until September. All right, thank you very much. Okay. And there is a sign-up sheet here if you wanted to speak to this issue and didn't get a chance to.
I think 2 a.m. is...
I agree.
Yes.
Okay. I want to keep this meeting moving, so if we could close those doors in the back, just if people are still talking in the hallways, so we can move on to leaf and brush. All right. Thank you, Mr. Huff. And now we're going to turn to a work session on our leaf and brush schedule for 2015. This is something that Public Works has been working on, the Public Works Committee, along with the staff. And with that, turn it over to Mr. Huff.
Good evening, thank you. What I thought I would do is briefly talk about where we are right now this year and what we are proposing as far as our schedule for next year. We are much earlier, hopefully, in the process with regard to looking at the schedule than we were last year, with our goal being of having this distributed in some means, late third, early fourth quarter, hopefully this year, for the beginning of next year. Currently, as you know, we just went through a storm-related pickup throughout the municipality, as well as picking up debris that had been placed out over the last couple weeks since our last collection. We are just finishing up in the next day or two, and unfortunately I must tell you that in the sections that we completed, there's already yard waste that has been put back out in sections 1, 2, 3, and some in 5. So that waste, I will tell you, will stay until the scheduled pickups begin in a couple weeks in August, which fortunately are only a couple weeks away. But unless there is a storm event in the next couple weeks that causes us to go out, that debris will stay there. What I do hope is that after tonight, in a few minutes when we get to the ordinances, and if the ordinance concerning leaf and brush is adopted, we will probably go out and do notices to people over the next week or so for placing stub material out there prior to the schedule. So that is our goal at this point in game plan with regard to the material that's out there. With regard to the schedule for next year, for 2015, that was in your packages, it's pretty close, honestly, to what we did, or what we're doing this year. A couple things I want to mention. There was discussion at our Public Works Committee meeting last Wednesday, and a couple questions came up, and a couple things for you to think about and respond back to me on, so that we can look to finalize this in the coming weeks. As in in the past, in January, we do have collection of Christmas trees for the entire month of January. There's been a few suggestions that do we need to do the entire month. You may recall last year that we tagged along brush pickup at the same time with that until it decided to snow every other day for 4 weeks. So we did, we do have trees for the entire month of January. We do have people that put them out in various sections throughout the entire month as they celebrate various phases of the holiday season and as they gradually take their trees down. So history has shown us that through the last week of January, we are picking up trees. Whether or not we add brush to it, don't know at this point. February and March is a time when we try to do a lot of maintenance on our vehicles, on our equipment, and then we are proposing that starting the end of March, the last week of March through April, that we begin our brush collection. Similar to last year, we will also, in the middle of that, do a loose leaf pickup, which will start in late April, and then we will have one final brush pickup again towards the end of May and into June. So there'll be 3 rounds of brush pickup through the spring with, in the middle of it, 1 round of leaf pickup. We then take a breather for a week or so, and we continue, though, with the bag pickup, which I will tell you so far this summer has been very successful. We have had a lot of people that have participated, that have put stuff out in bags, that we have collected on in most days. When we send when the crew is out doing it, it's pretty close to a full day of riding through the neighborhood and picking up bags. Section 1 in particular, we've had a lot of people that have participated in putting out bags. We've also had it in some of the areas of 5 in the old downtown area. We do have people that are participating, and we've had a lot of people that continue to come in throughout the summer and pick up the bags from us. That has seemed to have worked pretty well for some people. With regard to brush then, in August, we get back to picking up brush. We will start the middle of August next year again and have 2 brush pickups before we have a break and then begin leaf pickup in October. We then go through 2 rounds of picking up leaves through October, November, and into early December. As we did last year during the Thanksgiving week, we will have a break where we will not pick up any sections during those 3 days prior to the 2 days of Thanksgiving, Thursday and Friday. And we have also started the schedule a little earlier so that in December we have a full week break prior to the holidays. In the past, we have gone right up to the week before when I'll call it the 2 weeks of the holidays with Christmas and New Year's. This year, we bumped up the schedule to allow for a full week prior to those in case we need to go back and do pickup in any specific area or if we need to do an additional brush. I know at the Public Works Committee there was some discussion whether or not we should have an additional brush pickup sometime in November or December. At this point, I have not added that in. As I said before, this past year, after we got through the winter, we did start with an additional brush pickup along with the trees during January, and that was working fine until the weather went south on us. But at this point, I'm leaning towards having the flexibility of making that determination during the fall season when we would need additional brush pickup, if we would need it, because we just have the uncertainty, who knows when the leaves fall. And with my luck, I would put the brush pickup on the 5-week cycle or 4-week cycle when all the leaves come down. And then we won't get anything done. We won't get the leaves, the brush, or anything else. So I would like to have that flexibility to be able to put out a notice that we will do additional brush if it's needed sometime during that cycle or during that open week in December when we have nothing scheduled at this point. So that's sort of a quick overview of what we're looking at. I do know that we have We've received calls throughout the year. We have people who wish we would pick up every other day. We have other people that wish we never pick up again. There's both gamuts of the spectrum with regard to this. I think that with the action, hopefully in a few minutes with regard to the ordinance, that will make both ordinances consistent, the old borough and the old township ordinance, now one ordinance, which will allow us an enforcement mechanism throughout the entire municipality, which will be a significant benefit to us, to the department and staff as far as enforcing. So I'm open to suggestions.
Thank you. Start on this end. Are there any comments or questions?
I tried to hit some of Patrick's things from the other day.
You really want me to go first,
I'm bringing out my notepad.
I think the idea of having a to-be-scheduled brush pickup toward the end of the year is a helpful one. I'm concerned about the schedule that shows a complete gap from mid or late September all the way through to March. I think that's a big drop-off in service versus what the former borough was accustomed to. And I'm very conscious of the fact that we want a cost-effective solution for the entire town. But I am supportive of the idea of scheduling a brush pickup, an additional brush pickup that's not currently on the calendar in the fall, both this year and next year. That is more consistent with where I have been pushing you, I think, for about a year now, actually. So I'm very happy to hear that. I think the tree pickup in January, what we did this year is we said we'll also take brush at that time, and I think that we should note that for people as well, that unless you're excluding that option next year.
We can look at it again. That actually went very well in January, like I said, the first couple weeks, and then...
Yeah, once the snow hit, it didn't work so well. I understand that.
Nothing worked well.
But also, once the snow hits, most people have enough common sense not to put the brush out. The problem is the people who put it out and then the snow hits.
Yes.
And actually, I was one of those this year, so that was a problem for me. I just had to clean things up a little bit. So the other thing that I would like to let council know, as well as the members in the audience who are here possibly for this issue, is I've also encouraged the Public Works Department to look at and present options to council if we wanted to actually expand leaf and brush pickup even more than what that schedule shows. And so one of the issues, or one of the options we've been kicking around, is whether to have a crew that would possibly be available, but that would mean an increase in staffing required versus what the Public Works Department has now, and it would also possibly mean an investment in equipment. So we'd need to sort of weigh those options and whether the costs are worth it or not, and considering the types of service that we're trying to get to in terms of a service level for the community.
If we were to add a crew year-round dedicated to brush leaves, bag leaves, completely dedicated to them, a four-man crew, a driver, a truck driver, an operator, and 2 laborers, with benefits, you're looking probably in the range of between $300,000 and $325,000 of labor costs. You also have to keep in mind that we are in now, right now, recently approved for 1 loader. We would be looking at another loader that we would need to replace sooner rather than later. The loader runs around $170,000 to $180,000. We also would be looking at another compactor. We just had 1 compactor approved. It would accelerate the need to replace one of our other older 20-year-old compactors or trash trucks, and they are about $220,000 a truck. So those are some of the costs that you would be looking at in order to equip and outfit a year-round crew that would be dedicated through solely going section by section throughout the entire year, doing brush or leaves or bags or however we worked out a schedule into each particular section.
And listening to that just reminds me, I see a couple members of Sustainable Princeton out in the here tonight. And One thing that I think we're cognizant of is that there's different neighborhoods and people have different properties with different needs. And I know Sustainable Princeton has been working with the Environmental Commission, with the Public Works Department in terms of getting information out, both to landscapers and to members of the public in terms of what people's options are, especially with regards to the leaves. And this doesn't work for everybody, but on properties where there are woods behind your house, or you have room for a leaf compost bin, there's ways to keep the leaves on your property or to mulch them into your lawn if you have a lawn that are actually really good for your garden, and it's keeping something that instead of going out and purchasing compost or purchasing fertilizer, you have this natural resource that you don't have to be throwing out on the street. So I think we realize it might not work for everybody, but for people that is an option for, we're trying to get that information out because it would certainly help the Public Works Department, especially when you see people have these incredibly large properties with a corresponding really large pile of leaves out on the street that take a long time to load into the truck. So we're hoping to work on this at both ends. Yeah, Mr. Simon.
And then along those lines, one more thing I will tell you is that two of my neighbors on the block I live on chose to join the organic recycling program to be able to use the green recycling bins for garden waste on a weekly pickup basis. At $65 a year, it's a lot less expensive than paying any landscaper to haul it off, and those 64-gallon bins hold quite a lot. And so I wouldn't say that we want everyone in town to do it with all their garden waste, but for the high-volume users who have a small amount of garden waste each week, it's certainly a reasonable solution as an alternative to augment the scheduled service of the town. And for $65 a year, it's not a particularly high cost.
Ms. Butler?
I was really discouraged on my own street because the minute you came by and did this extra pickup the next day, there were new piles out there. But the piles are not created by the person whose property they are on. So I'm just wondering how you're going to... and once somebody starts a pile on the street, lots of people add to it, and it's not... it's not that property owner's pile.
By telling you that one of the problems that we are having, and we have staff when they are out in areas constantly looking for this, and I will tell you we've got some good suspects right now that we are watching. There are a number of landscapers that are coming into Princeton and are unloading their debris from other towns, other properties in front of the Princeton property that they are at, and then doing the work. And there's a couple ways we know that. One, we've been sending our arborist out, and he's been finding that the debris that is in the pile in front of people's homes does not match the type of tree that is on the person's house. That's the first thing. So as a result, we're picking up a little bit of watchdogging on some of those streets. And we also can tell by the age of the material that's put there, we can look and see that they are dumping old material, some cases brown material, which if they just cut it off of that person's lot, chances are pretty good that didn't turn brown in about 6 hours. So we have a number of suspects in a number of areas throughout the town, both landscapers and properties, that we're currently watching on a weekly basis, trying to, I hate to say catch the people, but truly to catch the landscapers and the property owners right now. We do have a problem.
And do we have
we know it.
Do we have a fine? Do you have something for illegal dumping or something where we can fine them a large amount, or do you need our help to make that penalty meaningful?
That's coming up in a few minutes.
Excellent.
Is the mechanism in which we will be able, in speaking with Triska's office and dealing with Lisa, she feels she's going to be in good shape with our documentation, photos, whatever we're able to get between the arborist and our staff to go after these particular landscapers and properties.
Bob, thank you. It's never a easy job when it comes to leaf, branch, and log collection. Just in front of my house, you'll see branches, and the branches were because New Jersey Transit bus decided to take off 3 or 4 big branches. So I'm just wondering, in instances like that where the homeowner has nothing to do with the branches that's in front of their home, is there any kind of,
We've had that a number of times throughout this year and last year. People have called in and told us certain things happened. Trucks hit it, a delivery truck hit a branch or something, and have told us that it's there. And as a crew goes by, we've picked them up.
okay,
So,
I just want anybody to be nervous of getting fined or...
no, it happens, and people
Going to
do
jail.
calls.
Going to
We
jail.
had it. We had it a couple months ago, somebody called a moving van, somebody was moving, their moving van took off a limb, and they
That's it.
called us up, and we're like, we can't believe, and
Okay.
the next day, we sent a crew out, and they picked it
Okay,
up.
just didn't want anybody to get nervous. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the side? Lost Heather. Mr. Eller, no?
No, just asking that the weather cooperates with you.
We hope.
All right. And I think there are some members of the public who are interested in speaking to this work session, so come on and line up.
My name is Phyllis Teitelbaum. I live on Hawthorne Avenue, and my husband, Tony Lunn, and I have been concerned about the brush and branch pickup issue for several years now. I've come to the conclusion that we need a new paradigm. Brush and branch pickup is sort of the orphan child. It's fitted in whenever the time and the staff and the resources aren't needed for other things. But it really needs to be looked at like garbage pickup. Garbage pickup is something that is needed on a regular basis. You can't just say, well, we won't pick up the garbage for these 3 months because we need the trucks for other things, and then we'll pick up the garbage at the end of those 3 months. The new schedule, although it does actually have more weeks of brush pickup than previous schedules, has them compacted into just 5 months, and there are 7 months when there's virtually no brush and branch pickup. And if it's garbage, if that's essentially what we're talking about, it needs to be picked up every month. What we need is a run around the Princeton municipality for brush and branch once a month. And if we don't do that, we're going to run into all kinds of problems. I'll speak from the point of view of the person who has a very small plot. It's a 1/6 of an acre. There's no space to store branches and brush. We compost, but they won't compost. We've tried it. You cannot get rid of them by composting. We don't have a landscaper. We were told by somebody in the Public Works Department that we should have our landscaper get rid of our brush and branches. We do not have a landscaper. We can't go to the Lawrence Ecological Facility, and I object to that anyway, because if everybody does that, that's a terrible, ecologically, all those thousands of trips that would be taken with all of the gas burned and so forth. But even if we said that that was okay, we don't have a vehicle big enough to carry our brush. And we don't have an SUV, we don't have a minivan, we don't have a pickup truck. And there are many, many, many residents in Princeton just like us. We talked earlier today about the diversity of Princeton. If we assume that people have large plots, large vehicles, a landscaper, then we're ignoring that it's a diverse population. And a lot of people don't have those. So I think that there needs to be a rethinking of the priority that should be given to brush and branch pickups. The one thing, I must tell you this because it's so funny. Public Works listened to us last year, and they set up an extra brush pickup. And they went round and they picked up brush. My husband called it a stealth pickup because nobody knew it was going to happen. The people who are not law-abiding, who had put out piles of brush and branches when they shouldn't have, because there was no pickup scheduled, they were rewarded. Their stuff was picked up. The people like us who are law-abiding and we don't put the stuff out unless there's a scheduled pickup, we were punished. Our stuff was not picked up. So stealth pickups do not work, and we do not recommend them. So I would ask for a rethink. I mean, I realize the enormous pressure that Department of Public Works is under to keep costs down. I realize the amount that was talked about to do, special, all the time brush pickup was not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for once a month. I understand the pressures that they're under, but branches and brush have to be given higher priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Boy, I picked a meeting where the whole agenda is my life, So I'm looking at the current year schedule, and the comment that I want to make is that I tend to agree that it goes, this year it went from the end, or it will go from the end of September, if we were to follow the same order, through March. And that's kind of a long time to not have brush and log and branches pick up. So if there could be something post-September, maybe, in October and then November, and I'm not so sure that we need that stuff in the snowy time. However, that said, sometimes branches come down, so yes, I guess we need something then. But my concern is more in the summertime, actually, where there was nothing from June 9th, the week of June 9th through the week of August 18th, and my yard, my bushes just really grow well in the summertime, and they needed a lot of pruning, and so it would be helpful if perhaps there was a pickup in July. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Warren, 17 Jefferson. I've lived in Princeton for 44 years, and 29 of those years are on Jefferson Road. For 29 years, our brush was picked up. It doesn't really, well, it matters because the books might have said that they weren't supposed to pick it up, but I can tell you that for 29 years, the brush was picked up nearly, at least weekly, if it wasn't every week. Public Works would come by. We're in the downtown area. Parking has to happen on Jefferson Road. Leaf brush was in the curb site, and it was picked up. So I personally feel this is a diminution of service coming from consolidation. And I agree with everything that Phyllis Teitelbaum had to say. Jefferson Road, the duplexes don't have backyards. I compost leaves, I compost my vegetable peelings in a neighborhood compost, but I don't have any spot on my lawn in the back to store garden clippings, etc. I can tell you my neighbor to the left is very kind, and she put all of those things on the median grass that the municipality owns and seeds and plotted, and it sat there for a very long time, and when it was finally picked up, all the grass was gone. It was brown. I tend to be a rebel, and I put mine closer to the curb so it's not on the grass. And I really don't want to get a notice next week or from the department telling me I can't put my brush out there. I don't know. Mr. Huff said that approximately $645,000 would be needed to have a service that was dedicated to that. How much should we save when we gave garbage collection to the whole municipality? So I think that, Phyllis is really right, that it has to be scheduled on at least a monthly basis. It's just something you have to do to accommodate the small lots in the prior borough. And so I hope that you will take that into consideration, and that would be fair and equitable as far as I'm concerned, and it wouldn't be a diminution of service, which I really feel strongly. Thanks.
Daniel Harris, 28 Dodds Lane, Princeton. I have a substantive comment about the ordinance that you're about to consider, but it is about all of this discussion that has just been happening. So I'd like to know, Madam Mayor, whether you would like me to wait. I'm happy to wait. You have waited this long.
The leaf and brush ordinance is coming up.
Yeah.
But it's not what we're talking about right now. We're just talking about the schedule at this point. Are there any other comments on the schedule? Okay. We'll take it back to council then. So we're supposed to adopt, you want us to adopt this, or what
The purpose was to discuss Any questions that you have, any things that we need to look at when we meet in August as a group? And my hope is to be able to publish, in the next couple months, the schedule incorporating any of your comments. So if you want to give me an adoption or a blessing, whatever you want to do on it, would be fine. Otherwise, quite honestly, I'm going to keep plugging ahead with the three of you on the committee next month and make any changes and then get ready to publish.
Okay. Yes, Stephanie? Okay, well then, come to the mic.
It's partly, hi, Stephanie Chorney, 11 Ray Street. I think I'm also representing the Environmental Commission. Matt was unable to make it tonight. I'm not sure if it's about the schedule so much or about the, what to do with the leaves, but I appreciate hearing what you had to say about the leaf collection, and I believe the schedule has the leaf pickups on it on a regular basis. So with consolidation and wanting to do everything the same way for every resident, I don't really know that it's possible for the leaf situation, because there are clearly properties that are smaller that have no space to put leaves, and there are clearly larger properties that have ample space to put leaves. And we do spend a lot of time and money in this town collecting people's leaves from very large properties where they could leave them on their property. So Leave the Leaves is kind of a new campaign that the Environmental Commission and Sustainable Princeton are working on, trying to educate residents about a healthier way to dispose of the leaves on their property, and then freeing up some of Public Works to maybe do more frequent branch collections if that's what's necessary. If this is approved with the current leaf collection, that means we're still allowing residents to put as many leaves as they want out on the streets, even in properties where they could put it in their woods or around their trees or in their flower beds, and then the safety of people with having loose leaves on the street as opposed to putting bags out only. So if that needs to be adjusted in the schedule, I just wanted to mention that for now. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing I want to mention about what part of this program is, and I encourage everybody to look online who has this option. I know not everybody is a landscaper, but those people who do, and especially people who are watching on TV, that Sustainable Princeton is working on a list of registered landscapers for the town and the services that they provide. So if you're interested in having leaves mulched into your lawn, or if you're interested in having someone build a leaf corral for you, if you're interested in other things that you can do with your leaves that are good for your garden, you'll be able to go online and look and see who in town offers those services for you. We're trying to make it as easy as possible, at least with the carrot approach at this point, to get that information out there and hope for that people take advantage of it, because it will help everybody as well as help people's gardens. So, Ms. Krummeller?
Well, I wonder how feasible an ordinance that is geographically based would be. I mean, would we run into problems, or that,
Well, in some ways, the schedule is Zone 5, Section 5.
I understand that.
It is mostly encompassing the former borough and some of the more densely populated streets surrounding the downtown. So in some ways, that's built into the schedule.
Right, but addressing the concerns of people who we're hearing from, I mean, I'm just wondering if we could consider, it wouldn't cost as much as 600, however much Bob said it would cost, if we beefed up service for a smaller number of residents, but I don't really know if that would run afoul of the law.
Well, currently, right now, during the cycles, we do the downtown or the Section 5 area twice within each cycle of doing Sections 1 through 4. So they do get twice as many pickups during the leaf season as the rest of the community because of the nature of the lots.
And could we add a brush pickup for just that section, perhaps? I just think, I don't know,
Well, Jenny, to build on what you're saying, I do think, as I went around, going door to door, talking to people this spring, it is it is a concern, and people do feel in the former borough that their services have been diminished, that they're not getting the same level of service. And it's particularly difficult with the logs, I think. And I certainly support an education program to talk for people who feel that they can leave their leaves in their yard. But we do have a lot of people who do their own yards, who have very small lots, and also have very old lots. That they're just, the architecture of the lots is just different. As somebody said, they don't have space in the back. Everything is kind of groomed, and there aren't the open spaces where you can just, because it's not just your own leaves, it's the leaves from the trees on the tree lawn, too. You've got all the municipal leaves to deal with.
We could look at increasing some of our collection in what we'll call Section 5. We've done that by doubling it at certain times of the year. We could certainly do it as long as we understand that we are not going to do it in some of the other sections. I mean,
right.
I think to go back and do it everywhere, that's when we start to say, maybe we need a whole nother crew that's just dedicated to it. We could take a look at if there's any way to increase in the Section 5 area, but as we all know, once I do that, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, and 4 ringing the phone lines going, why are you not in my section? So as long as everybody's comfortable saying no to that, I certainly can look at beefing those areas up.
Well, I would support Patrick's suggestion. I would like to see a little bit of analysis of that, because I do feel that maybe, we are down personnel, not just, and that services in public works feel like they're a little diminished, because the central business district doesn't look good. I mean, all the tree wells are full of weeds, and the stone covers overflowing the curbing, and so not just to pick up leaves, but it just feels like we need more attention generally.
To add to Councilman Butler's point, in addition to brush pickup specifically in the central part of town, the other concern that I think we heard voiced most last year was the part of the former borough that's not in Section 5, that had even reduced service even further from what Section 5 had. And so one of the options we had discussed and did not act on last year was whether to expand Section 5, but frankly, Public Works told us, look, if we're going to do that, we're going to need to create, and actually to finish the thought, to expand Section 5, possibly to encompass maybe all of the former borough as well as the neighborhoods that are essentially indistinguishable, that are in the boundaries around the former borough. But frankly, if we're going to do that, Section 5 is already large enough that we really can't do that and keep the schedule like we've got now. We'd actually have to create probably 2 sections.
We'd have to split that up and go to either an additional week or change the entire cycle from a 4-week cycle to a 5-week cycle, which would then put, the other sections every 5 weeks as opposed to every 4 weeks.
Right now we've got 5 going with...
5 goes with 2 and 4, which is our 2 smallest and easiest to pick up.
Well, so if we expanded 5, one option that we had discussed, but it might mean additional staffing, maybe not at the level we had just talked about, but would be a 5 and a 6 that go with each of them.
Each of them split it up differently.
Yeah. So... that's also something that we considered. We did not pull the trigger on it this year because of the challenges, frankly, in adapting it. But in terms of where the complaints came from, in addition to brush pickup, central town, the borough donut around 5 was sort of the next area that had the loudest complaints.
Do we need to...
Well, I think it's going back, it sounds like there's enough issues to send it back to the Public Works Committee, and I guess the question would be to the Public Works Committee, do we feel like we have enough information, or would we like a little bit more guidance from council as to what to bring back? And I don't know if everybody's sort of spoken what their sense is. I mean, I think one of the things we're struggling with is that
15.
this is, there's something about, especially the leaf pickup, that is not the sort of prime example of sustainability. And the reason why there's these big piles being dumped in Princeton is because a lot of the surrounding communities have done away with it. And it's like, I'm not suggesting that we do away with it, but if that's the future, you know, if we're moving to fuel efficiency, if we're moving towards trying to have a more sustainable community, and you look around the state of New Jersey, and a lot of communities have moved in that direction, it's, you know, do we want to be moving in the opposite way? And I think that's the struggle that really hasn't been, I'm just going to say it even though it's unpopular in the room, I can tell. But I think that's one of the things that we're struggling with. And, you know, I hear what everybody's saying about, you know, wanting to be able to have the convenience of, like, you have something in your yard, you don't want it there anymore, and you put it on the street and it gets picked up. But to do that has a cost to it that I think we honestly need to grapple with. So, and I think that's part of what's reflected in the schedule and part of the conversation that's been going on in the Public Works Committee. Yeah, Ms. Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate it. I don't know, because I don't know numbers, and certainly, but I mean, have you, if our Public Works Department is understaffed and too busy, and taking Councilwoman Butler's comment, it's true, the downtown looks terrible. I mean, have you looked at outsourcing? You know, and what does that cost? If it's going to cost $625,000 roughly, approximately, to buy to 4 people and a driver and trucks and new compactors, I mean, what is the cost of having a town-wide contractor, outside contractor doing it? Similar to all the estimates we got for picking up the trash for the whole town. I mean, have you looked at that?
We have looked at that. We have talked with a couple trash haulers. If they are to get into doing that, they want to do it year-round. Because if in many of their cases they are buying equipment or they're dedicating equipment and staff for when those needs occur. And with the last go-round that we looked at, it was more expensive to hire them and have them either on a retainer to come in or to be on, you know, a standby or do it year-round than it would be for our own forces to pick it up. It was very expensive, and they're committing, and by going out and getting additional staff, so they wanted basically a year-round contract to run around and pick it up, and that included their equipment and a staff. And they were looking at a lot more bodies than we were with 4. So we did. We've talked to a couple haulers regarding it. What were the numbers? The numbers were approaching $1 million.
Okay. Well, what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing anything, is to look again at Section 5. Is that, I just want to make sure there's sort of clear direction back to Public Works Committee. I think Public Works Committee would appreciate that.
I think that's what we should do, but yeah.
Is that what others would like us to do? And is there, because as Mr. Huff said, you know, Section 5 is next to Sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's the issue, is that Sections 1, 2, 3, and 4, especially those who are across the street from Section 5, see the trucks coming by more often. I mean, and that's already happening, but that's the issue. But as long as there's consensus that's where we should be going, we'll look at that. This is a no-win one, yeah.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, Section 5, just to be clear, those are streets where people park in the streets a lot. I mean, so they do need to be clear. This isn't just so people's yards are nice and tidy, but it's also getting the stuff off the street so people can park for commerce and all day, right?
Yes,
I mean,
but it's unfortunately it's growing, and it continues to get into the other sections.
Yeah,
Wait till we put in that hours of ordinance there.
If you see, if you live in section 1 and see that your neighbor in 5 is putting it out, you're now putting it out, and then the person 2 streets away starts putting it out, and then it's managed to work itself that we've got debris throughout the municipality again within a week.
I don't know, the solution would be that instead of doing it by section, that you do it by lot size, because that's true that section 5 has a perimeter, and all those people, they have the same size house as you do in section 5 and the same small property, and they're going to say, well, how come and it's true, if you have a small property and you have no place to put your leaves and your branch and your logs, I think that's going to cause a lot of problems. So maybe to avoid that, if you have a certain property size, that might be helpful, instead of just going by section.
Okay. Yeah, we can take another look. I think that's basically how Section 5 is done in combination with streets that have either metered parking or parking issues. But, okay. Are there anything else before we move on with this one? All right. The Public Works Committee will continue. And just so people know, I'm on the Public Works Committee along with Ms. Krumiller and Mr. Simon. And I'm sure all of council would like to hear comments as well, but make sure that you copy the 3 of us at least if you have further thoughts on this issue. Okay.
Liz,
Yeah,
after the report from the first aid, could we do the fracking ordinance?
Yeah,
some people are here for that.
Yeah, can I just...
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Well, we won't change it then.
And is anybody here from Edgehill? Okay, so we'll put you up too. All right, so we're going to hear from, we're going to do the reports first on the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad. And for this, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brusheye. And Mark, did you want to talk about this too? Okay, excellent. So this is something that we signed the MOU with PFARS several months ago, and we're here for a status report from Mr. Brusheye.
Yeah, I'll try to make it pretty quick. Over the past couple months, the engineer's office has been working at a diligent pace to try to get the site ready. We've been addressing the environmental issues. On that, we should have a final report shortly on what needs to be done there, where we have it pretty much in hand. All of the DPW equipment that has been stored in that facility has been pretty much relocated. There may be a couple of things left there. Power has been cut off with the exception of the fueling station that we're continuing to operate there, and the COW, the cell tower, it's on wheels. So those are the only 2 major power sources there. Engineering's also been working on procuring the necessary information on demolition of the building. All things being equal, we may get lucky and be able to get that project started in September, possibly a little earlier, but we'll see. Tonight there is a request on the council agenda also for authorizing a traffic study so that we can look at the intersections down there, specifically the one at Terhune, to see how we're going to accommodate ingress and egress and that traffic for once the squad ultimately locates there. So those are some big steps. As far as what the squad has been doing on their end, they have retained and are working with a fundraising person, although fundraising hasn't started yet. They need to get more further along in their actual planning. From the town's perspective, it looks as if the plans that they are developing to date will allow the refueling station, the gas pumps and diesel to remain on site. They may need to be relocated a little bit, but that's very encouraging from our perspective because we were having a difficult time looking at citing that. Most recently in the project, the attorneys for the squad and for the town have gotten together to look at the 3 properties. We have received the appraisal information on them. The construction office has done, or will be doing shortly, inspections on the properties. We've had environmental assessments conducted on them. I don't think they're quite done yet, but again, they'll be done shortly. And then the decision can be reached as to the ultimate public use of those properties, which staff will be putting something together and bringing that back to council shortly as to what those options are. So a lot's happened in the last couple months. A lot more will be happening in the next 2 months on the project. All is positive. It's moving forward in a you know, as far as government works, in a fairly quick time pace. And I just want to also thank Bob's office, because engineering has done you know, the bulk of the work on this. I don't know if Bob wants to fill in on any of the other blanks, or if Mark has anything to add. That's kind of where we are. So we're very happy on the progress of that.
That's terrific. Are there any questions from council on that report? Okay, great. Terrific, thank you. Did you miss the days? Yeah. You're awfully quiet during that leaf and brush discussion, Mark. All right. Let's move on to the first resolution, which is 14-213, place-to-place liquor license transfer, Palmer Square Pizzeria, Teresa's for expansion of premises to include the outdoor seating area. Are there any questions on this resolution? So I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Howard and seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes. And is there anybody here for any of the following resolutions? And if not, we'll come back to them. No, okay. Let's move on then to the first ordinance public hearing, an ordinance by Princeton concerning the leaf, branch, and log collection program and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Mr. Huff, do you just want to walk us through the highlights of this one? And I think there's a couple members of the public who wanted to comment too.
The biggest thing to say about this is it makes the two older ordinances now one, obviously consistent, and it gives us a mechanism to have consistent enforcement throughout the entire municipality.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would. Thank you.
Okay. And if there's no questions from council, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Okay, I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance, and anybody who'd like to speak can come up to the mic, state your name.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you all for doing all the long work that you're doing. I only stayed for 4 hours tonight, and you've been slaving more. I recognize that the proposed ordinance, leaf, branch, and log, is preliminary to a fuller revision to be presented by PEC and Sustainable Princeton in 2015. Nevertheless, I do want now to propose a minor emendation to the present revision. It is not a substantive revision. I wish to underscore that point. And I do ask you to refer to the ordinance in pagination, if you like. It's on page 4, section 19, 1-5, D, has a sentence that reads, the last sentence, leaves may also be disposed of on an owner's property, such as in wooded areas if practicable. That same sentence should be made applicable to branches and logs and should be repeated in section 19, 1-6C on the subsequent page, which is page 5 of the actual handout. If you make this change, then the newly included sentence can be used immediately as part of our education campaign to get citizens to support a responsible leaf, branch, and log ordinance that requires property owners as appropriate, to become accountable for financial and scheduling responsibility over what happens on their properties wherever feasible. If you make this change, concerned citizens can use this new text now to write letters to the editors, with the new text as foundation and precedent. This is a matter of publicity and rhetorical move sooner rather than later. Owners and owners of rental units must be encouraged now and soon required to dispose of logs and branches in the same manner as leaves. Thank you, Mayor, for having made the editorial comments you did earlier. On-site recycling, where feasible, constitutes a fundamental economic benefit to Princeton municipality. We've heard Mr. Huff's figures. We all recognize the link between climate change and local taxes. Trees and branches that fall on power lines during storms must be professionally managed. They are a threat to public safety. But if the downed wood is on my property, or if that wood originates on my property and I have sufficient acreage, the removal of that wood should be my responsibility. I see no reason why, as a taxpayer, I have any legal right to burden the municipality, that is, my equally tax-paying neighbors, with my negligence if I do not recycle my downed wood on my property. The cost is mine, like it or not. I bought the house. I bought the trees that came with the property. It is silly and stupid for people to think they bought a house without looking at the surrounding landscape and what might be required for upkeep. I'm shocked and astonished by some remarks that I've heard this evening. The legal analogy with sewer lines is instructive. Legally, each homeowner is financially responsible for his or her sewer lines running out to the street, as I know from last year when I shelled out $2,000. We are all legally responsible for snow on our own sidewalks. I object to paying municipal taxes for a leaf, branch, and log cleanup service that I do not use. I urge Princeton Council to use this temporary provisional revised leaf, branch, and log ordinance to encourage all our citizens to recycle organic materials on their own properties to the maximum extent possible, starting now. I'm going to cut the rest of this, you know it. The program is intolerably expensive. I'm going to ask any one of you on Princeton Council to please move the minor emendation that I have just proposed in my opening comments.
Thank you. Just before we do that, I want to hear from our lawyer if that is...
But I was required to say that, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I just want to see, if, in your opinion, if that's something we can do at this point or not.
Well, I think as a procedural matter, you could, and I don't think it would require reintroducing the ordinance, but I just want to make sure that that's consistent with the intent behind this ordinance.
So
from a substantive perspective.
Yeah, so let me take a stab. It's basically, he's saying in 19-1.6E, add the sentence, branches and logs may also be disposed of on an owner's property, such as in wooded areas, if practicable. I don't see any problem with that sentence. I'm actually happy to move to amend this to do that. However, Mr. Harris, I have a strong reaction to the rest of your comments. It's largely around accountability under consolidation. We promised the citizens that we wouldn't diminish their services. And we, the elected officials who all supported the Commission's report, did that. And also the voters who voted essentially made that promise to each other as well. And you, as a voter from the township, are breaking that promise that you made to the borough residents. The former borough residents, when you come and say that they don't have a right to that service, which they had, and which they understood would be continued under consolidation and felt that they were promised. So I have a very strong reaction to that, and I would like you to take that back to the Princeton Environmental Commission as well. I also would like to know the outlines of the proposed ordinance that you referenced. This is the first I'm hearing of this, and we were not considering this ordinance to be then replaced in a year. We were considering this ordinance to harmonize the ordinances. There
may be a subcommittee working on it, but I I haven't been aware that they have actually been working on a specific ordinance. Do you know, Stephanie?
May I say something? I mean, Stephanie, if it's a yes or no, I'd be happy to speak to you.
I was confused. I thought that you were discussing 2015.
You got to talk on the mic or we can't hear you.
If I may be asked to respond to Mr. Simon.
Well,
first of all, I'm not...
Point of order.
I'm sorry, yes.
Can Stephanie just say her comments in the mic so that we have them? No, you stay here, Daniel, and I just want to make sure that what you said gets in the record.
And so sorry, Matt is not here, but I was under the impression that this was for 2015, so I was confused as to why it was being done earlier. If there are two separate ordinances?
Well, there's a leaf and brush schedule, which is what we had the work session on, and then separately there's an ordinance for essentially giving Public Works enforcement capability over the schedule, and that's the ordinance that we're discussing right now.
I meant in your harmonization of the ordinances, I thought this leaf and brush was for 2015, not 2014.
No, this is the harmonization. May I now?
Yes, go
Well,
ahead.
maybe because it was on our schedule that's possible that.
Well, it was, okay, so I'll try to explain. So the work session that we had was about the 2015 leaf and brush schedule, and that's something that we do every year around this time of year so we can get the information out to residents. This ordinance is a harmonization of the borough, the former borough and the former township ordinances. And one of the things it does is it empowers the Public Works Department to actually enforce the schedule. So that's why it's important that we do it so that we can have a schedule. Does that answer your question?
I think that the PAC was not prepared at this moment to make formal recommendations.
Okay.
So I think we thought it was for next year, yeah.
Yes.
I speak now, and particularly to Mr. Simon, but also to all of you. First of all, I am not personally on the PEC. Secondly, I was referring only to this ordinance that harmonizes those of the borough and the township. There is, as Stephanie Chorney just said, no actual map yet, so far as I understand as an outsider, of any leaf, branch, and ordinance that would come down the pike in 2015, although I do understand that significant research is being carried out by both PEC and SP members. I will not, despite the invitation, retract what I said. I think there's and I certainly didn't mean to offend anybody, I think there's a point at which we do need to understand in a different way what we have purchased, when we purchased, and what the extent of our responsibilities are in that regard. I would like to say personally that during the course of discussions leading up to consolidation, I did indeed, as a member of a citizen of the former township, I did hear of some concerns about leaf and brush collection. But those were rumors only. I was not intimately part of those discussions or even in any way connected to them. So I really must dissociate myself from your comments with all due respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you wish, if you want to.
I think we need to move on.
I've said my piece. We don't need to extend the meeting with me repeating.
Thank you.
But is the more, if I understand, Mr. Simon did move to...
Yeah, he did, and that's sort of been hanging there. There hasn't been a second yet to it.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's seconded by Ms. Howard. And do we take a roll call on this one since it's the ordinance? Well, because we have a motion and a second, so I think...
We can still hear public comment and then vote on it.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, then we're in the middle of the public hearing too, so that's fine. It doesn't really matter. So go ahead.
Phyllis Teitelbaum again, Hawthorne Avenue. I would first like to thank Patrick Simon for his statement. I think that will be very well received by many people in the former borough who have not been completely convinced that that promise was being kept. I think that's a very fine statement. I'm looking at the ordinance, and I'm looking at section 19-16, branch and log collection, as you might have guessed. It says that the municipality will collect branches and logs along residential roadways and streets during the spring and fall of each year. First of all, as I said earlier, we need to rethink branch and brush collection and not think of it as a couple of months here and a couple of months there. I think that that should say at regular intervals, monthly if feasible, because I think that is really what brush and branch collection requires, and it's what the borough did. Also, I did compare the months in the proposed schedule with spring and fall, and the months in the proposed schedule do not cover spring and fall. I would say spring is March, April, and May. Would you agree? Well, March has no brush collection, virtually 2 days only. April and May do have brush collection. And the fall, I would say, is September, October, November. Well, September has brush collection, but October and November don't. So the proposed schedule doesn't even meet what the ordinance requires. So I would propose it should say during, the roadways and streets at regular intervals, comma, monthly if feasible, comma, each year, etc.
Okay, and I could turn again to our lawyer if that...
Well, actually, I want to actually respond to Ms. Teitelbaum's request, because we actually discussed, I think, pretty much exactly this point in the Public Works Committee prior to the introduction of the ordinance, and we have the language, the spring and fall each year, and such other times that may be deemed necessary by Director of Infrastructure and Operations, such as after major storm events. And the Director of Infrastructure and Operations shall determine the branch and log collection schedule annually and may also amend it. And we felt on the committee that that was flexible enough to allow us to schedule leaf and brush pickup whenever we wanted, but to commit to spring and fall at a minimum, which is the schedule that is on the table. And so, barring a consensus among council to amend to monthly, which I don't think we have achieved yet. Mm-hmm. This is how we handled exactly that issue in the committee. We're very conscious of the fact that we do have service level concerns from a subset of the community.
Right, but the proposed schedule does not have leaf collection for the 3 spring months and the 3 fall months. So you're not even meeting the ordinance.
Just to recall from the discussion we had with Mr. Huff earlier, we talked about basically a currently unscheduled additional pickup sometime in November or December opportunistically at a time that is cost effective for the municipality. And we also talked about including brush pickup during the month of January, along with the tree removal, the Christmas tree removal, so weather permitting. So, in effect, we are living the and such other times as deemed necessary. Now, I don't know if we need to say and necessary and appropriate, but I think we are addressing your concern effectively through the management of this to the extent that we can. When we have not. I will fully admit we have not gotten to the once a month or once every 2 weeks, but we are certainly working on service level issues, and I think the ordinance as it stands already has the flexibility for us to move in whatever direction council decides, whether it's to increase or to leave it the way the schedule is right now.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that certainly you're doing the very best you can. But I would remind you that the ones that are set up, now we have some time, we'll do it now, that's a stealth pickup. And stealth pickups reward the people who are not law-abiding, and they punish the people who are law-abiding.
Well, to that end, I would encourage you to, if you haven't already done so, to sign up for the notification process from the municipality. There are two. There's one for email for updates from the website, and there's a second one for 911 notifications, which the town also uses for public service announcements, including changes to the leaf and brush schedule. So
I have done that.
you signed up to both?
There are thousands of people out there.
Well, I'm certainly hoping that whoever's watching on TV.
Well, if you have a landline, it goes automatically to your landline. So it's if you need the phone, if you need the call on your cell phone, you need to register. But if you have a landline, it'll go to your landline. And for all of the extra pickups, because we did hear that, and so for all the extra pickups, we have been doing a call before we do the pickup. So that's been corrected because we understand about the stealth issue. But thank you. Okay, I'd like to return to the motion, and the motion by Mr. Simon, and it was seconded, I think, by Ms. Howard, for Mr. Harris's recommendation for 19-1-6E. And do we have to do a roll call for the change on this, or just a vote?
This is just to make that small change to
Okay,
the
all
ordinance.
right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the amendment passes, and I should say I'm going to close the public hearing.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm closing the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, if you could, actually, no, we need a motion for the whole entire.
Seconded.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Simon, and Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crum-Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the ordinance passes unanimously, and now we're going to go to the second public hearing for tonight, which is a bond ordinance by the municipality of Princeton authorizing as a local improvement the reconstruction of sidewalks along Edge Hill Street, appropriating the sum of $65,000 therefore, providing for the financing of said appropriations by the making of a down payment and issuance of bonds or notes of said municipality, and further providing for the special assessment of 50% of the cost thereof. Are there any questions from council? And seeing that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Oh, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this or not.
I can speak briefly. Good evening. I'm Herman Martinez. I'm representing Princeton Theological Seminary. We own several properties along Edge Hill, and I was just curious on where this is going. I understand it was going to be bluestone in lieu of concrete sidewalks, and I just wanted to hear directly what's going on, and hopefully it's a promising project.
I can answer that question. Because this is a historic district, the project has gone through both the HPC, and we've made application to SHPO for approval, State Historic Preservation Office. And one of the conditions of approval is when we are replacing sidewalk, if we have existing bluestone sidewalk, it has to be replaced with bluestone. If there's existing concrete sidewalk, then we would be giving property owners the choice between replacing with bluestone or with a dark tinted concrete like we use in the downtown historic districts.
Terrific.
Question. What is the dimensions of the bluestone, the thickness in particular? Because in other projects in Princeton and some of our properties that we own, we notice that the bluestone cracks very easily with the weight of possible vehicles riding either on the sidewalk or jumping curbs, and it gets to be a problem.
I don't have an answer for that. I can do research and we can, I can get back to you on that.
I'd appreciate that, and also the way it's installed. I unfortunately have pretty good experience with this with our campus properties, and I painstakingly go through this to see a long-term installation.
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
Our installation is per the former borough specifications, and I'll review those and get back to you.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Deanna, will you be keeping the brick gutter?
Yes, the brick gutter and the bluestone and Belgian block curb will remain in place.
Thank you.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Crum-Miller. and seconded by Mr. Miller. I'm going to close the public hearing as well. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll do that next. Okay, the ordinance passed unanimously, and I know there's a couple people here still for the fracking ordinance, so we'll do that one next. So this is an ordinance introduction, an ordinance by Princeton banning the use of hydraulic fracturing in the municipality and amending and supplementing the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968 in connection therewith. And Ms. Crummiller, do you want to say something about the Environmental Commission's support of this?
Yes, the Environmental Commission has recommended this, and with the help of Food and Water Watch, some people are here from Food and Water Watch who helped us draft the resolution, and thanks to Lee Solo. You might be curious, I mean, some people watching, why do we need a fracking ordinance in Princeton? And I know I found out something new, and that's that I think it's the Newark Basin, I can never remember the names, actually comes underneath Princeton. So we do have a store of natural gas underneath of us. It's conceivable that sometimes someone would want to use fracturing to get to that, which everyone knows is highly destructive to the environment. It's wreaking havoc on our environment across the country. It's destroying our groundwater, contaminating it, and it's just really terrible. If you care about the planet, you want to stop it. So I'm happy to be introducing this ordinance. Another thing that I found out that you might want to know is that right now, under our ordinance, someone could get a use variance to, because I was saying, well, we already did a resolution against fracking, but the truth is that someone could conceivably come in and get a variance for fracking unless we pass this ordinance. So I think it's a good idea.
Are you moving?
Motion?
Yes, I move it.
Second.
May I ask a question about the ordinance? I understand that fracking is not all a vertical process. In many cases, the drilling is done horizontally, and it's conceivable that fracking could take place in an adjacent municipality, but the drilling could be into our municipality, into Princeton. How do we deal with that?
Well, I wonder if our ban,
does the ordinance cover that?
If that covers it? I'm not sure.
If you could state your name, please.
Sure. Lauren Petrie, Food and Water Watch. Thank you so much for addressing this issue tonight. And as Councilwoman Crummiller has pointed out, that the South Newark Basin does run from Pennsylvania through central New Jersey, much of which is under Mercer County and Princeton, does contain up to 1.6 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. The infrastructure is already here in New Jersey. It's already made its way into Princeton by way of compressor stations, pipelines, so we're already feeling those effects. So it is just a matter of time before someone does apply for a non-permitted use variance. And the importance of this ban would kind of set a precedent here in Mercer County. What we saw in Middlesex County was New Brunswick and Highland Park banned fracking, and then shortly thereafter, Middlesex County moved to ban fracking. So they became the first and right now the only county that has officially banned fracking in New Jersey. And so what we want to do here in Princeton is make sure that this town is protected, and then we can move to neighboring towns and say, listen, we want you to follow Princeton's lead, and then we can eventually move to all of Mercer County so that Princeton is protected, and we won't see fracking in towns like Lawrence and Hopewell or East Windsor that can essentially frack and move horizontally underneath Princeton. So we want to make sure that we're setting the precedent here in Princeton and getting other towns in the county to move as well. So with that, I actually, if I can just take another minute, I know it's running a little late, so I want to be respectful of your time. We did lose a few folks that were here to speak tonight, but I did want to mention Reverend Bob Moore from the Coalition for Peace Action was here tonight. He did want to say a few words in support and thank the council for addressing this issue. Also, Terry Pantaleo, who's president of Kingston Greenways Association, wasn't able to make it tonight, but she did provide a statement, if I could just take a moment to read that. The trustee trustees of Kingston Greenways Association wish to express their deep concern with regard to hydraulic fracturing in Princeton. The risk of harm from individual wells and the cumulative impacts of water withdrawal for fracking is too great. Discharge of wastewater with unsafe levels of radiation and chemicals and air pollution from gas wells and wastewater impoundments can have severe impacts. The township should not endanger the environment or the quality of life of its residents, but rather prevent pollution and degradation from gas development by banning fracking. Again, that was a statement by Terry Pantaleo from Kingston Greenways Association. So I do have a copy for each of the council. Also, we've been out talking to folks in the community, and we'd collected over 300 letters here from concerned residents in Princeton. I can leave with the clerk when I'm done here. And I'm confident that the council and the mayor do understand the dangers associated with fracking, and I do thank you so much. I thank the Princeton Environmental Commission for bringing this issue to your attention, and Lee for getting this put together and put on the agenda for tonight.
As an activist, I would just like to say, you should tell people that emailing really does work. It might not work for a U.S. senator, but for us, we read emails, and you don't have to take the trouble to send us things in the mail. And it's actually better because we don't get them sometimes. Okay. So I just like to let you know.
And it saves the trees, too.
With local elected officials, email is really effective.
Okay. Duly noted.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
I believe that most of the South Newark Basin lies to the north and the west of us. And I'm wondering how we can take action to stop adjacent communities from permitting fracking that would then drill horizontally into Princeton. Legally, do we have any right to stop that if another community, let's say an adjacent community, permits fracking and they drill under us? Can we take legal action to stop that?
I don't know. I have some ideas of what you might be able to do, but nothing I can answer accurately tonight.
Does our ownership of the land go more than 3 feet, more than 20 feet, more than 200 feet? I mean, fracking goes down many, many feet in order to reach the shale.
That's a law school exam question, isn't it?
I'll get back to you on that.
I mean, I think taking this step as a municipality is a good step. Yep. But I think along with it, we've got to reach out to adjacent municipalities and convince them that it's in their interest to take the step also.
That I agree with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and to that, actually, I had mentioned to Matt Wasserman of the Princeton Environmental Commission that I was interested in actually putting together sort of a presentation for environmental commissions and council members throughout central New Jersey and, the coastal area, which is where I organize so that I could basically get as many environmental commission members together as possible to enlighten them about this issue and basically walk them through the steps of what they would need to do to work with their council to enact local fracking bans, because that's really what we need to do is, not just have individual towns, but we need neighboring communities. This has to be really a statewide effort here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is, the ordinance has been introduced by, come on up.
Stay here all night without saying. I came to support this ordinance. You know me. I am from Princeton. And I'm delighted that we can be first in this, as we've been first in a number of wonderful things. So thank you all. And I'm sure
technically we're not first. I don't think we're first.
First in Mercer County.
In Mercer County. I understand. And we're going to spread it. So thank you very much. Mary Ellen Marino.
Mary Ellen Marino, good.
Hi, I'm Dayton Martindale. I'm a student at the university, and I'm working with a couple of groups, Princeton Sustainable Investment Initiative and the Princeton United Left, to move our endowment out of fossil fuels. It seems like you're really on board with this, which is great. And you've talked about like the damage to the water, damage to the community, local ecological damage is huge. But the reason why many, including President Obama, my home state's governor, Jerry Brown, who tend to be against fossil fuels, do support fracking is because they say it's cheap gas, and the claim is gas is cleaner. I just want to clarify a scientific point that the stat that is used is if you burn gas for electricity, it's roughly 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions of burning coal for electricity, which sounds good, and that's why it's popular. But a lot of gas is used not burned for electricity, and in that context, using gas is not necessarily cleaner. And B, at the fracturing site itself, as I'm sure you know, there are methane leaks. Methane, scientists developed a global warming potential metric. Methane over the course of 100 years is something like 84 times as potent a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide is. It doesn't last, over the course of 20 years, it's 84 times as potent. Over the course of 100, it doesn't last quite as long, so it's only 36 times more potent. The point being that the argument that movement to natural gas is a bridge fuel, which is made by many Democrats and Republicans, doesn't actually pan out under the evidence of how the gas is used. And I just want to make sure you also know that side of things.
Thank you very much. Mr. Simon?
Yeah, I have a question for Ms. Cecil. Do we have, as a town council, the authority to ban all natural gas and oil drilling in town rather than just fracking? Or is there any state law that would prohibit that? And I ask
Again, I don't know the answer.
and I ask because I'm a little worried that we've gotten the popular term and decided to ban it, when in fact I can't think of any place in town where it would be appropriate for any sort of drilling for natural gas or oil. And I guess I would like to hear from Mr. Kaiser or the engineering staff or from Mr. Solo if I'm incorrect in that statement. My request would be that we simply ban oil and gas drilling and also ban horizontal drilling under the town to the extent that it's allowed by state law to do so, and further that we ban waste products from any such operations, including the water waste from fracking, which was noted in the memo leading up to this ordinance as well. It seems like we're creating a very limited ordinance when the obvious answer is to ban the activity we don't want of any kind, no matter what the technology.
Well, to some extent, we have, and that in general, manufacturing or industrial uses are prohibited in almost all our zones anyhow, or not permitted. This was done more because the PEC brought it to our attention to say, could we specifically ban the use of hydraulic fracking? I've talked to the zoning officer a number of times, and it's our opinion, both of our opinions, that if somebody wanted to do drilling for oil, that would be a manufacturing or industrial use and wouldn't be permitted anyhow. I don't know legally where we were concerned if we were too overly broad and just said drilling, because there is drilling that goes on throughout the town, whether it's for water wells or geothermal wells and the like.
I might be able to answer that too. I think part of the issue with fracking is that you can get at less desirable gas than you can with regular oil drilling. So I don't think that the reserves that we have under Princeton would be like you have in Texas, where you'd have regular oil. I mean, I also don't want to run out the rest of the time in our meeting because we have the salary ordinance and other things.
Well, I also want to tell you about the waste, because there was the waste. We did find out that we could not legally prohibit the transportation of waste for some reason, right?
The transportation or the storage?
Or the storage or anything. We just couldn't regulate the waste.
First of all, we're actually not banning the transportation of gas that has been fracked. We are not doing that with this ordinance.
I know, but I thought you mentioned the waste, that you wanted to address the waste.
I did, because one of the things that was noted in the lead-up, in the factual lead-up to the ordinance, was that the state of Pennsylvania has determined that there are 3 sites in New Jersey where fracking wastewater can be deposited. And we are not banning that either within our town.
Right, because we heard that we could not.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Krummeller, a seconded by Ms. Butler. If there's a desire to table this, I'll entertain that. Otherwise, we should vote on the introduction of this ordinance.
I'm sorry. I think that since I'm having trouble with this, I'm going to simply move that we ban drilling for natural gas and oil in town. I don't see the point of limiting it to fracking. And if we don't need to, if Mr. Solo is telling us that current law already prohibits all of that, then I have the question, why are we passing this ordinance?
Well, can we do that with the introduction, or do we have to reintroduce it?
Well, at the moment, you haven't introduced anything, but that's a whole different ordinance.
Right, okay.
That's just a whole different ordinance, and you can't have the verb.
Do that without noticing it.
We'd have to draft an ordinance for
Okay. All right, so.
Because this is just a very targeted amendment to our land use code dealing with a method, a particular methodology, and
Okay, so my...
I'm happy to write a new ordinance if that's the desire of council, but you can't do that tonight.
All right, so my related question, though, is I thought we heard from Mr. Solo that it's already illegal in town.
But you could get a variance. You could get a variance. It's prohibited, but without specifically an ordinance against it, you could get a variance. Isn't that right? It's a prohibited use, but you can get a variance from...
You get a variance to an ordinance.
You can always ask for a variance from anything. If you wanted to add the drilling, I mean, we can rewrite the ordinance. I was going to comment, I see you have the public hearing on August 25th. This is an amendment to the land use ordinance. It needs to go to the planning board. They don't meet in August, so you could, I guess, act within the 45 days because they won't be able to respond, but you may want to kick it out a little further anyhow.
So does that mean we cannot have the public hearing on the 25th? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, you can. Is that going to be 45 days?
I don't know. This is I don't think so.
Under the municipal land use law, you have to refer any amendments to your land use ordinance to the planning board. The planning board then has 45 days to get you a report. If you don't get that report within 45 days, you can go ahead and act without it. But otherwise, you have to wait until you get the report back from the planning board, and what the planning board has to do is look at the ordinance and make a determination as to whether or not it's inconsistent with the master plan.
Okay, but that means that we cannot have the hearing on the 25th. We have to wait 45 days, right?
Yeah, or get the report from the planning board, and you won't have it between now and the 25th.
All right, so...
According to what Mr. Solo said. So yes, that means that the public hearing should be pushed out beyond August 25th.
All right, but...
Give the planning board time to look at this.
But coming back to Mr. Solo's point, he has told us it is illegal now. And we've said, well, we get a variance, but I actually don't understand how this ordinance changes that.
It just listed as a prohibited use. It was being a positive step. If you'd like to rewrite the ordinance to include all drilling, we can do that as well. But this was more as a positive step to take a stance against hydraulic fracking, and that was really what was driving it. It came from the PEC. Staff took a look at it. We made some minor modifications, clarification. The original ordinance from PEC tried to ban hydraulic fracking waste using our roads. We can't do that. You can put weight limits on the road, but you can't say these kind of uses can't be on the roads, is my understanding. And Trish could jump in if I said that wrong. So we removed that, but otherwise the ordinance is as it came from the PEC with some minor editing.
Okay, but let me back up and just ask the question. Is manufacturing permitted anywhere in town?
No.
Okay, so it's already illegal everywhere in town.
This is to make the ban, my understanding from the Environmental Commission is they wanted to make the ban even stronger than it is.
Yeah, and the related question, which I didn't hear answered, is did the original ordinance or any variation of it have ban the depositing of waste materials from drilling in town?
It did not. The original ordinance from the PEC banned the use of our roads to transport by trucks transporting the waste, and that was what I said we couldn't regulate. The ordinance didn't have anything about depositing waste material here, but just going back to what you were just saying about the manufacturing, this ordinance is getting at a particular method of extracting natural gas from the ground, and I would not want to rely on an interpretation of manufacturing in our zoning ordinance to say that fracking is not allowed. This is getting at a particular methodology expressly. I think in terms of more broadly the question of can we ban drilling for oil and natural gas in town, frankly, I've got to go do the legal research on that.
Okay, this has been introduced
Can I call
and
for
it's
the
been
vote?
seconded.
Can I call
Yes,
for
we're
the
calling
vote?
for the vote now. You either vote to introduce it
Yeah.
or you don't,
Yeah.
but we got to move
I
on.
mean, it's been 15 minutes on
Okay.
something that we all...
Please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crum-Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
No.
Motion carries.
Okay, the ordinance is introduced on a vote of 5-1 with Mr. Simon voting no. And the public hearing for this ordinance, let's switch and make it September 22nd. And then we'll be fine with the 45 days. And in the meantime, we'll refer it to the planning board. Okay, thank you. All right. We're going to go back up to, we skipped over reports, so let's have a rapid-fire report here.
I was going to raise that,
Ms.
but I'm
Howard?
going to do it in my best FedEx voice. Human Services is doing the 5th annual Backpack School Supplies Drive, and so I'm glad we're going. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to remind folks that the deadline is August 15th for you to contribute. The second is, I want to update on Public Safety Committee. As you know, and I have been updating you all for a while, that the Police Department has reached its workforce goal in advance of the date that was given by the TTF. They were supposed to be at 51 officers by year 3 after consolidation. We've hit that actually last year. And now we're looking at 2 to 5 more retirements over the next year. So the Police Department has been moving forward on candidate recruitment, and the update for today is that the department does have 2 finalists that the Public Safety Committee will be interviewing next week, and we hope we'll be able to come back to full council and recommend hiring. But it will become important from a timing perspective that we move forward, because we'd like to get potential candidates into the academy this fall so that they can start working. But we are at 51 now, soon to be 50, and 2 to 5 retirements coming up. So we're actually going to be below our target. So stay tuned, but know that we are moving forward. Thank you.
The Animal Control Committee has met, has reviewed data on deer car collisions, and reviewed the data on the cull last year, and will be preparing a recommendation for a further cull of the deer herd during 2015.
Ms. Zimmerman?
No report.
Ms. Butler?
No report.
Mr. Simon?
I simply want to use a moment to thank the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee for the newsletter that went out with the tax bills. I can tell you that as an elected official, I have received positive compliments from a number of residents that it was a helpful newsletter, and they really thanked the Finance Advisory Committee. And I want to thank the volunteers as well as the professional staff who helped us put that together. Thank you.
Great.
Also, I'm going to apologize, but I have a plane to catch in the morning, so I'm going to have to leave.
Okay. I think we're still okay. Thank you. And I'll second that comment from Mr. Simon. And then a few more. The Personnel Committee met and talked about removing the box from our application because we noticed it, I think it was a comment from Ms. Cromwell, we noticed it on the administrator applications, and we're going to be bringing a resolution to council to amend the personnel manual to officially make that change. So look for that in one of the coming meetings. The C-Click Fix operation is moving along, and it's really exciting. We're going to be having them back at the end of August and then again in September with the official launch. If you haven't done your training with them, I encourage that you do, because it really helps to get a sense of how the back end works and how we will be fitting into that. So I encourage everybody to do that. And we all know there's no meeting on August 11th, so our next council meeting after tonight will be, I don't know, 25th. Thank you. And are there any staff reports?
Very quickly, update regarding the hospital site. Work is continuing at that location. To date, 34 100-yard cubic yard dumpsters of recycling material has been removed. They anticipate that work continuing for another couple weeks. Also, a geotechnical firm plans to perform 6 soil borings this week on the site to determine the structural capacity of the soil. And the asbestos work is continuing. They anticipate it continuing for another couple of weeks, and they'll be finished. And to date, 40 cubic yard dumpsters have been removed. And they have some additional soil that will be removed, scheduled for the week of the August 4th. And a monitoring well will be installed in relation to the 6,000-gallon tanks that were removed that were found to have been leaking.
Thank you. Any other reports? No. Okay. We'll go back then to the resolutions. 14-214, the Princeton Fountain Ridge LLC occupancy and use agreement for storm sewer crossing.
I'll move that.
Second.
It's moved by Ms. Krummeller, seconded by Ms. Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is Resolution 14-215, Always Safe Sidewalks contracts for concrete sidewalk cutting services not to exceed $22,775.
I'll move that.
Second.
It's moved by Ms. Krummeller, seconded by Mr. Miller. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 14-216, Unuzi Wrecking and Recycling Corporation to demolish and remove the structure located, this one I should recuse myself from. At 59 Meadowbrook Road. Yeah, we'll do the next one. Resolution 14-217, Professional Services Agreement for Mazer Consulting for traffic study at Route 206 and Valley Road, not to exceed $36,200.
I'll move that.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That resolution passes unanimously, and I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Miller. I'm recusing myself on the Resolution 14-216.
Resolution 14-216, Unuzi Wrecking and Recycling Corporation to demolish and remove the structure located at 59 Meadowbrook Road, not to exceed $35,900.
So moved.
I have a question on that. Oh, yeah, 2 questions. Actually, was this contract decided by competitive bid?
Quotes were received for the demolition work. We received 2 quotes. One was for Unuzi in the amount of $35,900, and the second was from J. Vinch and Sons of Trenton in the amount of $49,300. So we're going with the lesser quote received.
And you don't see any problem with, they're also doing the demolition at the Avalon Bay?
Yes, they are. They're working as a contractor to Avalon Bay. We've been very satisfied with the work, professional firm, and I believe the reason they've come in with this lower price is because they're already working here and they do the asbestos removal in-house as opposed to having to hire a subcontractor to do the asbestos removal.
Great. And then will this be covered by FEMA?
100% will be paid by the FEMA grant, yes.
Great. Do we have a?
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution passes.
Bernie, why don't you just start it? You want to do the...
Ordinance public hearing, an ordinance creating no parking zones on a portion of Alexander Street and amending the code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Mr. Kaiser, can you take us through that?
Yes, this is a housekeeping ordinance. The signage is already in place, and this is just simply to put the ordinance in place as the road is currently signed.
So moved. Second.
Well, this is a hearing, so we need to open up the public hearing for this. And then seeing no one, we can close the public hearing.
So moved.
It's moved by Ms. Krummeller.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Butler. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Krummeller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yep.
Motion carries.
Okay, the ordinance passes unanimously. Now we're on to the ordinance introduction, ordinance 2014 of the mayor and council of Princeton concerning salaries and compensation of certain personnel of the municipality of Princeton. And Mr. Broshire or Ms. Monzo?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick overview. What this does is just set the ranges for the salaries. It's been gone over by the Personnel Committee. For the most part, this ordinance reflects modest increases at the top end of the scales to accommodate a 1.6% increase for employees. There are a couple of other modifications for changes in job classifications, but otherwise the ordinance is identical to last year's. At the next meeting of Mayor and Council, there will be a salary resolution that if you adopt this ordinance, you'll consider that will set the exact salaries for the individuals in the community. And it does not include any of the discussion